And I have the great pleasure today to actually have Nick Kleverov here from Native Foreign. Nick, I feel like we go way back. And when I say way back, it's probably like 4 months, which is like 3 years in AI time.
Long time in AI time, yeah.
It is.
It's like animal time.
Oh, yeah, seriously. So you were on a panel yesterday.
Yeah.
What was your takeaway?
You know, I actually really love seeing the community together here and, you know, getting to see people I know, people whose work I know, and getting to be on a panel with them and kind of hearing their perspectives, you know, and I was on the panel with judges, and I was a winner of this, you know, Project Odyssey contest, and kind of getting a sense of what they were looking for as judges, who have also created plenty of stuff, you know, and kind of the way they approach client work versus personal work. It's pretty interesting because in some ways it's very relatable, and in some ways I'm also seeing that there's differences between all of us and how we, you know, take our practice.
So thinking about Project Odyssey for the next time, for the next year, for the competition, what is an advice that you would give a creator to make it in, to, you know, maybe win the next Project Odyssey?
Well, first you got to do it. You got to actually
That's really good advice, yeah.
Sit down and make a thing. That's the first piece of advice.
Yeah.
But, you know, trying to make something that's authentic, that's real, and, you know, picking a story that you relate to and that maybe other people can relate to, I think is where I would start. And then I would try to just use the tools we have now to explore that story and, you know, put it out to the world.
Is that part of your philosophy as the brand Nick Kleverov or the brand Native Foreign? Or how would you describe your philosophy in like 1 to 2, 3 words or more?
I'll give you a few more than 3, but
okay.
I'm a storyteller first.
Okay.
And what I love about AI is it's allowing more stories to be told with this technology.
Yeah.
And so how can we use this tech to tell more stories and more stories that we care about?
Can you elaborate on that, why we can tell more stories? For people that are just starting out, that kind of like don't know, you know, they come from the traditional background, and they're like, okay, where do I start with AI, and why am I able to tell more stories now?
Anyone that is a filmmaker knows what it takes to create things, and you know,
forever.
Yeah, I mean, you know, and we are in a create by any means kind of world, and I actually that's part of why I think we're going to see a huge renaissance of independent cinema, independent voices being able to tell stories, because you're going to be able to do more with less, with smaller teams being able to tell stories. And you know, in many senses, it could very well be a hybrid approach of, okay, well, we filmed these actors and, you know, we built the world with AI, or however you kind of slice and dice it. But I think that's why it's exciting, and that's why it's possible, because we don't have to be limited by the same constraints we used to be. It's helpful to have that filmmaking experience, and I can actually tell when I watch films, like, okay, who's been out grinding and making films and understanding the axis and the 180 line and, you know, visual storytelling.
If you're an editor, I feel like as an editor or storyteller, you're mostly like a great AI storyteller then, because you understand the story.
The editors are the new directors.
Here we go.
And I'm not just saying that because us Russians invented editing a long, long time ago.
They did?
But, yeah, they really did.
What?
Yeah, they really did.
Okay.
There's the shot of the woman, and then they cut to a piece of bread, and they were like, she was hungry, a shot of the woman.
Yes.
Cut to something else, she was sad. So anyway, yeah, that was the Ruskies. But, you know, I think you're planning the film out now, right? You're like, okay, well, we're laying out the film. We know what we need to have in our timeline, and then you're throwing shots at it, like, oh, that shot doesn't work. So now it's this kind of rapidly evolving process where you're making it and editing it at the same time, which is really fun.
Yeah, and you're kind of selective already at the beginning. You think of, what do I really need? What shots do I need? And then, you know, the editing process is not that long anymore, because you didn't shoot, I don't know, like 200 hours of a footage to then edit down.
And even now, compared to like when we started, you know, the shot ratio is a lot less.
Yeah.
Like when I did the Toys R Us piece, I mean, I kid you not, I was 1,000 to 1 on some of those shots, because it was so unhinged.
1,000 generations.
Yes, to make one shot. And then I got down 100 to 1, and now, you know, now we're living in like a 10 to 1 space. I think that's like good. Reasonable.
That's solid.
But, you know, back when you just like, it was only text input, you know, and you kind of don't know what's going to happen, and all sorts of wild stuff happens. So I think
a lot of morphing and crazy stuff.
Yeah, really artsy stuff.
When did you start? When did you start with video?
I mean, Open.
When it was okay enough to use it?
No. I mean, Open invited me. We were playing around with DALL-E a long time ago,
Yeah.
and then when they were kind of going multimodal, they came to me and they were like, "Hey, do you want to try out?"
Was Chad like, "Hey"?
No, I mean, we've been doing work for Open, so there's like
Gotcha.
a bunch of people we know there, and they were like, "Hey, you should try this out." And so, kind of my idea and my thought was, because we had Paul there, and we had Walter and Josephine, and a lot of really talented people. And my thought as one of those for 7 was like, okay, what would actually the brand and agency world look like, and how is that going to be impacted by these tools? And that's why, my demo was a lot of like more ad looking stuff.
Yeah.
And then that's when I also wanted to really try to put this Toys R Us thing together, because for me it was really important to see, okay, like let's do a real project. There's a lot of specs, but like, what does a real client project look like? Because when you work with a client, there's all sorts of different stuff you have to keep in mind and do. So, that was kind of the big trial for me, is like, okay, let's see how this happens. And, and I even knew when I'm making it, like, it's not a perfect piece, and back then text to video, there's no consistency with the kit, right? And then so you got to kind of figure your way around it.
Remember that time when there was only text to video? Like what?
Good times.
A couple months ago.
Good times.
So you're talking about the Toys R Us commercial. Is that the project you're most proud of, or is there another one that for you just leveled everything up?
I would say the thing I'm most proud of has not been released yet.
Oh!
And
okay.
it was actually something interesting happened to me, which is sent a client the cut, and we'd been going through some rounds, and in the end, it was approved. And he said something to me which was really interesting. He said, "I genuinely don't know how we would have filmed those scenes before AI." And so to try to actually create shots that are pushing the visual language and visual storytelling in a way that can't be done with cameras is what I'm excited about.
That's amazing, because that's a good use case for why you might not want to shoot and actually use AI, where nobody can say, hey, you've replaced the DP and the gaffers and all of that. It's just, it's not possible.
The best DPs I know now are messing around with the tools, and they're showing me shots for things that we're going to go shoot. They're actually like, hey, what do you think about this shot? And trying to map it out with the lighting and the vibe. I mean, that's brilliant.
It's so good for previs.
Absolutely. Yeah. And production designers too are doing this, directors. So it's...
Yeah, those jobs aren't necessarily going away, but I feel like as a creative in the field, we have the tools now to communicate, not just with words, but actually with visuals, to our production designer, to our DP, to the people that we need to involve in order to get the product out. And it's going more and more in the direction of what is actually in our head, and not, I feel like there's so much lost in translation sometimes. When you prepare for a project, I have something completely different in my mind than the production designer or the DP, and you have to bridge that gap, and AI is a wonderful tool to do that.
Getting on the same page.
Getting on the same page, exactly. If you have questions for Nick, just let us know in the comments, and I'll try to slide them in before we go live. I have another question. So, for all of our listeners out there, what would be your advice if they're just starting out, like going into these AI-led spaces as a creative?
Don't be scared. It's not a magic button that's replacing you.
Yes.
You need to bring your talent and your skills to the table with your practice. And I always like to tell people that shipping beats perfection. Just ship.
Love that.
Make a thing and put it out.
Yes.
At the end of the day, if you never release anything, then no one ever knows. And, I get art for art's sake, but I think putting stuff out is the best learning tool.
Yeah, I'm such a perfectionist, and I had to learn that. I had to learn just at some point, especially because all of these tools are evolving so fast. You could literally just say, okay, let me stop. In 2 weeks, the tool is going to get better. And then I get a better output. And then again, in 2 weeks and 2 weeks and 2 weeks, right? So you can have forever projects because you want to make it perfect.
Yeah.
But I do try with every project to make it age well.
Yes.
And that's, I think, sometimes a little bit of a challenge depending on what your project needs.
Yeah.
Figuring out the tools, which tool actually works with what. I mean, I remember, I have that sometimes in my keynotes, I remember Cheap Hicks, my horror show that I did in that one second place at Curious Refuge. it was 2 days before Act 1 came out that the deadline was, and I, of course, submitted like 20 minutes before the deadline.
Of course, yeah.
That's what we do as creatives.
Yeah.
We need the pressure. And literally, like, I submitted it, and then 2 days later, Act 1 comes out, and I'm like, oh, my lip sync sucks.
Yeah.
So I did start to go back and just, edit those parts, but because of that reason, and because I didn't like how the lip sync looked right now, I actually only had 2 sentences in total that you would see on screen that were lip synced. So it was kind of like, I got away with it.
Yeah.
It was okay. But man, when that came out, I was like, really? Curious? Can't you not have your deadline like 2 days later? But yeah, anyways, I feel like that's something where you just have to abandon your perfectionism and say...
Well, yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. It has to be good. It has to be good at a certain level. But then beyond that, because even if you're a perfectionist, like, we all might still hate it. So, you might spend...
Wait, what? You hate my thing?
No, I'm just saying, like, we might think, oh, it's so great, and we work on it for so long. But, once you get it to a certain point, you got to release and you got to put stuff out.
Well, here's my question. When you make something, and obviously, oftentimes you have clients, right? But apart from the client aspect, do you produce for the audience or do you produce for yourself?
Who's watching it? I absolutely keep the audience in mind.
Yeah?
Absolutely. I think producing solely for yourself is just a very, like, narcissistic act of pure art. And I get it. Like, if you're an artist and that's what you want to do, great. But if you want to entertain and make things that people care about and people relate with and resonate, you can't get lost in the clouds. Like, you have to tell a coherent story and, either funny or emotional or what have you. But, like, what is your goal of the piece?
Yeah.
And so even personal pieces, I'm like, okay, well, what is my goal of this piece? What do I want the audience to feel, or what do I want to happen from making this
So you're making it a universal story so everybody can relate to it. Like, I'm thinking of Dominant, for instance.
Yeah.
That was such a beautiful piece. If you have not seen it, please watch it. Nick, where can they see it? On the website?
Kleverov.com. Yeah.
Kleverov.com.
With a K.
Kleverov. V. Yeah, what did I say?
2 V's.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, well, that one's personal, right? But it's about my dad and kind of like looking through, he was a famous artist in Soviet Russia and kind of trying to see life through his eyes. And, how else would I have filmed 1960s Soviet Russia? I couldn't have. So I think AI, again, is like a perfect tool for that. And although that one is, I guess, like, let's just say on the artsier side and the more personal side.
It's beautiful.
That was still my goal. Is like, I want people to hear from me and understand what I'm trying to understand and grapple with my own family history. So, even that piece, which is maybe a little bit artsier, more in the clouds, like, it still had a point.
So take your own personal story, make it relatable to the audience so they can take something away from it. They feel emoted in some type and shape, I would say, and then release it, ship it, do not obsess over it. I think that's the takeaway here.
Yeah.
All right, we have an amazing lineup.
Yes, we do.
I am so excited to interview some of these guys later, and some of these guys and girls. Thank you so much, Nick. This was amazing. If you have any questions for Nick, you can put it in a chat, but also you can follow him on Instagram and LinkedIn and all the social media.
All the things.
And please also check out UpscaleConf. Hashtag us on all of your posts and check it out on Instagram and LinkedIn. And stay on because there's so much more that is happening in the next hours and you do not want to miss it.
Upscale Day 2. It's going to be exciting.
Upscale Day 2.
It's going to be really exciting.
And we're going back to Linus now and starting our day on the stage.